Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Beard and the Bald. I know you didn't think we were coming back. Here we are. We're back. It took a hot minute, and we are now on YouTube. And we will also be on Apple Podcasts and all the others as well. But we will be debuting exclusively on YouTube going forward. So hope you guys tune in. So bookmark, like, share, follow, all that good stuff. So for anybody that's new that's coming on and just seeing this on YouTube, I am Paul Shirey, the Beard, and I am joined by my compatriot, the Bald, Christopher Bumbray.
Yeah, still bald, but I have a beard now, though.
you tend to do have some kind of a beard usually. So
yeah.
It could also be, we can maybe be the beard and the bald / beard or something. We're also joined today by one of my good friends, somebody I've known for a really long time, another trusted voice in the film community, and that is Zaki Hasan.
Who's also got a beard.
I do. You know,
but it's not Paul.
When Paul and I first met, I just had a little thing here that was black as pitch, and now it's gray and bushy. So
I've got a bit of gray in mine too. It's salt and pepperish, but I just keep it really short.
The gray is definitely coming in. I will fully confess that sometimes I do dye it if I just feel like.
Me too. I use Just for Men sometimes.
Yeah, I do the same. I do the same thing because there's, sometimes I'll be looking at it like, God damn, that's gray, dude.
I do TV, and usually I tend to look better than I do now. That's for sure. But when I used to go into the studio and when I used to work my day job, I used to use Just for Men. But now working from home, I just I would never wear a hoodie before. I used to always have nothing but disdain for people that wore hoodies. Now I wear a hoodie pretty much every day. I've been wearing the same pair of jeans since Monday. It's Friday.
Oh my Lord. You're not supposed to wash jeans anyways, so I'll give you a pass. Zaki is the only one that showed up with enthusiasm today wearing a Batman shirt. I almost put mine on.
Not intentional. I realized when I got on, I was like, oh yeah, hey.
Look at that. What a happy accident.
I met the occasion, but that was not the plan.
Yeah.
So anyways, the Batman is why we're here today. Also to do kind of a soft soft start to season 5 of The Beard and the Bald. But there is a movie that just came out with Ratalada, the Batman, and we have things to say about it. I'm sure I don't have any idea what Chris thinks, which I'm very curious to hear Chris's thoughts. Zaki and I have talked about it.
I held off on writing my review for a while because on Joe Blow, I mean, I saw it relatively early. I saw it over a week before it opened. But Jimmy saw it really early in LA because he got to interview Matt Reeves, and because of the embargo, we wanted to hit that deadline right when we were posting our reviews. So I just had him do it, and he gave it like a 10 on 10, and I loved it, and I just kind of, I didn't agree with that, but I let it slide. But I ran my review this morning, and
okay.
Yeah.
What is your, I want to know, so I want to hear your thoughts. Me and Zaki are, to give a little context for those that are listening, Zaki and I are comic book nerds. All right. Mm-hmm. It's almost embarrassing for me to say that I've been reading Batman comic books for 35 years. That is a fact. And I think about that and I'm like, is that true? Like, yeah, about 10 years old is when I started reading comics, and Batman has been in the mix ever since. And I know Zaki is the same. So we're both nerds. Chris is less of that. Chris is more.
I am a film nerd. Yeah. But I probably know a bit more about Batman's comic book origins than other superheroes because I did read Batman for quite a while.
Okay. Well, there you go.
But when I was like in my early like 10, 11, 12, because I just, I was one of those guys that went crazy for the 89 Batman.
Yeah, 89 Batman is really what spawned it for me. I had a few comics at that point. So I guess technically I was 12, and that really kicked it off for me. And I was like, holy shit, I got to find every Batman comic I could. I remember I lived in Florida at the time, and there was a newspaper where they're talking about the violence in 89 Batman. It was a whole article. And they had images from the comics in there. And there was one where Batman's holding a gun and he's pointing it at you. And it's the Todd McFarlane cover from Batman Year 2. Mm-hmm. And I was like, dude, I got to find that comic. Yeah. This is before the internet. I was like, how do I track this down?
I vividly remember so I was 8 when it came out, but I started reading the comics afterwards, and I got really into. I remember Legends of the Dark Knight was a comic run that I liked, and I still have issue 1 of that, and a couple of the early ones. Well, it's not worth much, but then I maybe I really liked I really liked the origin story of Batman, and I read Batman Year One. And I really liked that, and there were a lot of the comics in that kind of really stuck out in my mind. And I read, I read The Dark Knight Returns, I read The Killing Joke, so I do know a bit more about Batman's comic book origins than as opposed to pretty much any other character, because I think there's something about Batman that just kind of gets to people. It's a character like James Bond almost, I think, where it's you can do enough with the character. It's pliable enough that you can make it relevant to a lot of different generations. And I prefaced my review by saying that one of the things that's really interesting about Batman is that throughout the entire run, it tends to be a movie a director signs on. They never just do one Batman movie. Usually they sign on because they want to do a few Batman movies, and they tend to keep the same actor, and they tend to have a very specific take. Tim Burton's take on Batman was very unique. Joel Schumacher's, as much as we don't like it and it doesn't hold up well, was a very unique take on Batman.
It was distinct.
The only difference is he had different Batmen. He didn't have because him and Kilmer didn't get along. But then Nolan's take on Batman was very distinct, and then Snyder's take on Batman was also very distinct. And I think that Matt Reeves's take on Batman is no less distinct. We're always saying, everybody's saying with this Batman, you've never seen a Batman movie like this before. But I think when Batman Begins came out, we'd never seen a Batman movie like that before either. Same thing with Batman Forever. Same thing with Batman 89. Or same thing with Batman Returns. So and even Batman v Superman, it was always very unique, right? Because it was the director's vision. And so I respected that going into the Batman, and I liked it. I'm not as Jimmy gave it a 10 on 10 and loved it, and I liked it quite a bit. I thought it was good. I still gave it an 8 on 10, which is very positive. But I would never say that it's the best Batman movie ever, because first of all, I've only seen it the one time. And it was, I thought it was a very well done Batman movie. I really liked it. And, maybe the sequel could even be better, and it could, maybe eventually Matt Reeves could make the best Batman movie ever. But it'd be hard for me to say that this was better than The Dark Knight. It'd be hard for me to say that it was better than Batman or Batman Returns, which to me, especially Batman Returns, I rewatched it after having not seen it probably for about 20 years at Christmas time. And I was blown away by how good it is.
Yeah.
And which is weird because I'm kind of friendly with the guy who wrote it too, but I hadn't watched it in a long, long time. And, so we've had a lot of good Batman movies and very distinct Batman films. And I thought that this was a really well done version. What Matt Reeves is doing is he tried to make, the noir Batman, a detective Batman, Detective Comics. And it's weird because, even though, and I'm assuming we're going to go into spoilers here.
Totally going into spoilers. We'll have a spoiler warning.
That at the end of the movie, they're setting up Joker. But I feel like it could take place in the same world in a way as the Todd Phillips Joker movie, because to me, they feel very similar. They're both kind of inspired by that 1970s style. They're both very heavily inspired by Taxi Driver, Scorsese's Taxi Driver, like massively so. Like it's weird, these directors of like a certain age that are in their like early 50s, I guess, all their favorite movies are all from the 70s, right? So those are always, and I feel like the next generation, you're going to see like the people that are influenced by the 80s, right?
We're gonna have a lot of synth score and bombastic action.
We're getting that now, though. Yeah, we're getting that. Yeah, with the younger directors, that's what we're getting, right? But now I feel like these guys are the ones that are really into Scorsese and stuff, and the 70s. So to me, it felt like it could almost take place in the same world, even though there's differences. But it's funny because it's definitely a very adult Batman movie. I mean, it's not that I wouldn't say it's not for kids. I wonder if kids will be as entertained by it, as their parents will be. So I'm curious to know what your kids thought of it, Zaki, although maybe they're older.
Yeah, like I think you took what are the age group that you took, Zaki, for your kids to go see it? What's the age range? Did you take all your kids? Or?
No. I took my 2 older ones. So they're 15 and 13. My 13-year-old.
I would have liked it at 15 and 13. I probably would have really liked it.
That's why I took them. And I know, Paul, you took Dash, who's about the same age.
So I took Dash, and he's 12, and he loved it.
I would have loved it at that age too. Probably from about 11 on, I would have been really into it. But I feel like maybe younger, I wouldn't have been as crazy about it.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting thing that I didn't think about until I was walking out of the theater with my son. And he was telling me how much he loved it. And I'm like walking here. I'm like, I liked a lot, but I had problems, like blah, blah, blah. But then I realized I was 12 years old in 89 when I saw Batman for the first time. That was the first Batman movie. That was my first Batman movie. And it dawned on me, my son is 12. He just saw his first Batman movie in the theaters.
And that's going to be probably, for the rest of his life, that's going to be his Batman and his Batman.
Exactly.
So
I told him, I was like,
yeah,
this is like your Batman. Like, it's kind of weird. It's just happened. Did you feel?
Which is great because it's really well done. So it is his Batman.
Yeah, at least it's not a piece of shit. Like, I mean, it's not a bad movie.
No, it's I think it's a really good movie, but it's just it's funny though. In like 30 years, I could see them doing like whatever version of Batman, and then like they bring. And if he hasn't done it in like 20 years at that point, and then everybody's going fucking crazy, like, oh man, Robert Pattinson's come back, the real Batman. Yeah. So meanwhile, Zaki, Michael Keaton is like 100.
Yeah, right? That's when he can finally be like the Batman with the cane in the cave from Batman. Yeah. Like, that's when we can finally get to that.
Because that's how we feel about Michael Keaton coming back. It's like when I heard he was coming back, I'm like, oh man, the real Batman's coming back. Like.
And he is.
And then there's, but to my girlfriend, but then to Laura, the real Batman is Christian Bale, right? Wow. She's like, that's Batman.
That's so funny. Yeah. So Zaki, do you feel like this was like their first Batman movie, or are they already ingrained in the 89 and
I think the version they have the most affinity for is the Dark Knight trilogy.
Yeah.
So I think for them, Christian Bale is slot one always. Although my 12-year-old, he's 13. He just turned 13. He really likes Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
I remember showing him my Michael Keaton, the Hot Toys Batman, and then I was like, oh, I've got the Val Kilmer one coming, the Christian Bale one coming, and he's like, yeah, but what about Ben Affleck? So I like just for him, I had to track down the Ben Affleck Hot Toys.
But everybody forgets about Affleck, but I mean, I think he was actually quite a good Batman. I just collectively, he probably got less screen time than any other Batman. He never had his own Batman movie.
What I've said about this film is, had it become, what it was originally. When they started out, the Batman was going to be the Ben Affleck one, I would have been perfectly fine with that. I think he was great. He never got the spotlight that he really deserved. But I was talking with my boys afterwards, and my younger one, I actually just watched the Long Halloween animated movie with him.
I watched that as well.
I had already seen this movie, so I was like, oh, you should watch Long Halloween. You might, because there's certain similarities. And so I think that actually helped prep him for this, because that in pacing wise, it's very similar. It's very much unraveling a mystery. But he was like, I like Pattinson as Batman. I didn't really get to see him very much as Bruce Wayne. I feel like I need more time. So he was actually coming at it from
that. I really liked though. And I mentioned that because I actually just did another interview about it. I'm doing a lot of Batman interviews this weekend. and it was interesting because I said this, that you've never seen a Batman movie that's this focused on Batman.
I agree. I said the same thing to them, actually. Yeah.
And it's really telling, because at one point, the Riddler says to him, it doesn't matter who you are under the mask, because that's who you really are. This is who you really are. And it's very true, and it's because, if you look at the Keaton Batman movies, and even the ones from the 90s, they were always dominated by the villain, and then the Bale movies, very much the Bruce Wayne story. Right, like Bruce Wayne is there are huge chunks of those movies where he's Bruce Wayne, and especially Dark Knight Rises and Batman Begins. Those two, majority of the screen time is him as Bruce Wayne, but then this one, almost no screen time for Bruce Wayne, where Batman is having long stretches of dialogue as Batman, not really fucking with his voice either, kind of doing it more. He does more of a low key thing, which I really liked, because I thought he looked great in the uniform. And when he's Bruce Wayne, most of the time he's at least semi dressed as Batman though. Like, he's got the dark eyeliner on, and he's kind of yeah, he's in like semi Batman mode for almost the whole time you see him, and you see it in the eyes, like he's Batman. Even when he's Bruce Wayne, he's still Batman. You know, he's looking at people like he's Batman, and I thought that was kind of cool because there wasn't the duality that you have in some of the other performances where it's an act Batman. This is just who he is, you know. But I think that'll probably change.
Different though than like Superman, right? Superman, they always say, oh well, Clark Kent is the mask and Superman is the person. I don't think that's true of Batman, because it was Bruce Wayne whose family was killed. It's Bruce Wayne who grew up and like went through all of that. And it's the Bruce Wayne identity that allows him to be Batman. Because if Bruce Wayne was not Bruce Wayne, there is no Batman. He could not afford to be the Batman.
Well, and what I think there's
a bigger piece to that. And someone had mentioned, I would have liked to have seen a part where he goes into the 44 Below club as Bruce Wayne, which he does go there to go see Penguin, but where like you see like his status and how that would affect the people around him and stuff like that.
You do get it at times though, like at the funeral, everybody knows who he is, you know, and
they're just kind of like, oh, we haven't seen you in a while. What's interesting is there's a scene, just a shot rather, inside the Riddler's apartment or hideout, whatever you want to call it, where there's clippings. And I noticed them because I was doing a story earlier today where there's photos of Bruce Wayne and headlines and stuff that say, oh, Bruce Wayne shows up for big council meeting, or Bruce Wayne is seen around town and stuff like that, where they kind of subverted in the actual movie. Yet in these clippings that the Riddler is saving, they're showing Bruce Wayne is out living his life and doing his thing. I think that would have helped the movie, and it would have helped Riddler's motivations more for him hating Bruce Wayne. If Bruce Wayne is like hiding out and basically kind of this damaged guy, I don't feel like Riddler would hate him as much. He'd be kind of like, what is with this dude? But with Bruce Wayne out cavorting around and not necessarily being a happy-go-lucky playboy or putting on that persona, but at least having a presence, you know, and something where Riddler would be angry because Riddler's trying to expose the corruption, right? And here is Bruce Wayne, who's still involved and still, even though he's, you know, a little more low key, he's still involved in like Wayne Enterprises and all that other stuff, which at this point he should have anyways discovered the whole renewal fund shit. Like, how would somebody that high up into that level not know about it? You know,
well, there's a couple holes in the movie. Like for me, the two biggest problems that I had with the movie is I didn't buy the relationship between Gordon and Batman, where Batman is just allowed to walk around crime scenes and they almost defer to him. This guy dressed as a bat. I prefer Batman being kind of a low key ally of Gordon's, you know, and like not, you know, walking around like he's like in charge, you know, like it's just kind of, you know, it's like oh yeah, okay, yeah, come on in, Batman. Like it's
like in the comics, Batman always shows up, and Zaki, you can back that up too. You know, Batman shows up after the police have already done their photos and all that other stuff, and that's Gordon letting him in, like, hey, Batman, everybody's
that's how it should have been. You know?
Hey, everybody's here. Hey, look, Batman's here. You know, it doesn't
like, hey guys, and then the guy the cop knows him, you know, and but then that was the issue, and then the big reveal with Carmine Falcone when they recorded the murder with the cell phone. Like, I thought that was so
very convenient.
Oh my God. I remember I even groaned when it happened in the theater. It was kind of like, oh, this is just, you know, how absolutely convenient. But, you know, I also wrote my review. I think it does serve the movie thematically in terms, not logically. And I think that the movie is a thematic film as opposed to a logical film. But at the same time, though, he's trying to do all the corruption and stuff. And, you know, another movie it really reminded me of, and I would imagine that Mary is probably a huge fan of this movie, is Prince of the City by Sidney Lumet.
Yeah.
Like very similar films in some ways. And I would imagine that is a movie that has really, really inspired him.
I found
and they even say that Prince of the City over and over again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they do. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it's or Falcone that says it, but yeah, I found that the whole corruption thing, to me personally, I found it to be kind of a tired theme. I kind of wanted there to be a bigger motivation, but like, yeah, the rich people are assholes and they're stealing money. Okay. I kind of wanted more out of like the bigger plan. And I did think it was kind of funny that, you know, basically at the end of the day, like Riddler is like an edgelord incel, you know, it's just kind of like, once I saw when you see him in the video at the end at his hideout, and he's like, they're seeing him talking to his followers, and all the other videos he's like, you know, I will kill you. Like, here's my riddle. But like, he's all like hardcore. And then in the videos, he's like sitting there on the bed and he's like, hey, I just want to thank you guys for your support. You know, like, follow, and subscribe. And I was just like, what? Are you serious? Like, come on. So that kind
I think the thing about it though, and if you think of it this way, is that your son's generation and the generation that's coming up, who are the boogeymen? What are the things that scare them? And it is these edgelord incel guys, because they're the ones that are like shooting up schools and stuff like that and committing mayhem, you know? So that is the thing that scares them, really. And I think that it is the Batman movie for the new generation, you know? So, and also that they did, but it's not a big tentpole movie in a lot of ways too, though. Like the action is very low in the film. And it's funny, the action, in terms of action though, the best Batman ever was for action was Snyder shooting Batman. He's the best action director.
Batman warehouse scene in BVS, in my opinion, is the absolute best representation of the Batman that we've known from the comics, the way that he fights, utilizing all the different tools that he has. I find that scene to still be the best Batman.
I think he's
any movie.
The best action director, but I think that, you know, the scripts for his movies suck.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I think that
it's never perfect, you know, like the writing is
polish needed.
Yeah, the writing
Snyder
is not
a
good.
visual stylist, and I fucking love Zack Snyder.
His visuals are amazing. But the writing, you know, the Goyer and stuff, it's just not good, you know.
Yeah,
but then
he needs better writers on his team.
Whereas Nolan, I think has an amazing eye for like his canvas is great, and his screenplays tend to be pretty good too, and the acting is amazing. But then he's not great at shooting action, you know, like being able to follow it. But how about you, Zaki? You've been quiet for a while.
Yeah, we want to hear from Zaki.
I've been hanging back like Batman at the crime scene. I'm just watching. I'm watching the cops argue.
Do you have your contacts in where you're recording everything?
I liked that. I
like
that. Cool. I mean, look, that was cool. But here, like, let's just talk about this for a second, Zaki. And I'm sorry to steal your thunder for one moment. When they go into 44 Below, and she's wearing, and Catwoman is wearing the contacts.
I was just about to tell them to shut
and it just happens to
well,
just pop up a name and what their job is to every person she looks at. And I'm like, what fucking app is Batman using that has this kind of technology? Like, you know, it's like where Reeves is like, this is going to be very super grounded. And I'm like, oh, grounded when they have the contact lenses that just identify people by looking at them. That's the grounded we're talking about here. So you know
what's funny about that though is I'm of the perspective that I'm like, okay, you're telling me that that's what it does. Okay, sure, I'll go along with it. But I'm sitting there like, are you telling me every time Bruce Wayne has to like do the quick change into Batman, he's like, wait, hold on a second, let me get my
putting the solution in.
Yeah, like that's where that lost me.
And his eyes should be red afterwards. Fuck, you know, because I wear contacts.
I'll buy the tech. And that's the way I'm like, funny. Okay, sure. But
I want to see a scene.
Can't get him wet too. It's like they're stuck, and he's like, oh.
I want to see a movie where
flushing it out with the solution.
Well, it's funny because you see him putting the eye makeup on at one point early in the film. You see him actually.
Well, he's got to put that on after the contacts, though, because if he gets the eye makeup in his eye, it's
you don't want to mix the two. You don't want
to.
That's like an SNL skit or something that needs to.
It's funny how this is the first, because Batman has had the eye makeup since '89. But this is the first time that they've made it literal as opposed to just a conceit. Because I'm
glad they showed it though, because I always thought that Batman Returns, as much as I love that movie,
I know what you're
when
he
takes the mask off and you see the last shot, his eyes look totally different. Right. It's so bad.
It's so distracting.
You're like, well, like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Anytime
has this been Michael Keaton ever been in the bat suit? Like, you know, like,
yeah. It's always awkward when they take the fucking cowl off. There's a scene in BVS too where Batman comes back to the Batcave and he just kind of like pulls it right off like a beanie cap. I'm like, I don't fucking think so. It probably took 3 hours for Ben Affleck to get that fucking thing on. There's no way just to be like, I'm good.
I interviewed him in the bat suit when I was on the Justice League thing, and he was wearing the cowl because it takes a long time to take off, and he was kind of like walking around like this.
That's funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, ultimately for me, the biggest problem or problems that I guess that I had with the Batman were, I don't know. I don't have any problem with a 3 hour long movie. And the truth is I didn't get up to go pee once or do anything. I
thought it went by pretty quick.
But the problem is I don't feel like it earned that 3 hour runtime because there's so many like the clues and all this other stuff, and there's a lot of like kind of drag in there where I'm just like, do we need this scene? Does this advance the story? You know, I really felt like there was a lot of fat that needed to be trimmed. And what it reminded me of, Chris, is, you know, like what we've talked about multiple times is like these Netflix movies where they're like, hey, you guys are directing, just do what you want. Here's the money, have fun. We're not going to do shit. And I feel like Warner Brothers was like, oh my God, we got Matt Reeves. He's doing Batman. Don't anybody say, don't fuck this up. But it's like, I feel like somebody kind of probably could have stepped in a couple of times and be like, hey, Matt, do we need this scene? Or,
well,
you know?
I think that it's similar to how I felt about the last Bond movie. I think that, you know, everybody's sense of pace has really been influenced by the rise of the limited series. Right. So I think that that's what all these movies are paced towards. They all feel like limited series together as instead of a real film experience, you know, and I would imagine that the Batman is going to play really well once it hits streaming. It'll play well at home. You know, it'll be one of those movies too. You might go back and you might rewatch it on streaming, and you might be like, hey, you know, you could focus more on the positive than as opposed to the negative. And there's a lot of positive.
I'm going to see it again in theaters before it's HBO Max. I think it's a good theatrical experience, but Chris, that's a great point. That is something that I thought of while I was watching it, where and I started to think, I was like, you know what, why has nobody done a Batman like mini series or series with this kind of budget? And I feel like
I think they should, and I think they
would have more time to tell these stories. I think it would actually be better than
this would have been a good
experience.
It would have been great if they'd done it this one that way.
Yeah, and you could have had 2 more hours of Matt Reeves to do even more crazy shit. You get more action, you get more story. Hopefully, I mean, unfortunately, you'd probably get a little more, you know, fat to deal with in terms of like, you know, him just like padding shit. But I think you would get a more complete, bigger story.
Well, it's like Peacemaker, you know. I mean, I just finished watching Peacemaker, and Peacemaker was great, but you know, if that had been a movie, it could have been a 90-minute movie as opposed to like a 3-hour show, you know, which was great, but it would have been like a 90-minute movie. But I think that when you do a limited series, it does give you avenues to do different things. And, you know, it's funny because, I mean, they're going to do a Penguin limited series. I think Penguin's going to probably get a more fleshed out story than Batman did in a lot of ways, right?
Well, and I wonder too, if since they're doing the GCPD and the Penguin, if all of that basically is kind of in service to leading to the Batman 2 or whatever
probably
it's called, you know. But I don't see that as a bad avenue for these.
I mean, he might show up in them too. Who knows?
But like, why not? I feel like why has Batman? He's always been this character that's kind of kept in the shadows for like TV shows. Like you look at Titans or whatever.
Birds of Prey, Batwoman.
Yeah,
Gotham,
they're like
even.
He's kind of there, but you never see him. Like, why not? Why can't Batman show up? You know, and I feel like maybe we're getting to that point where
I think it's the walls are breaking down. You know, I think
I don't see why not. Like, rather than doing the Batman 2, I'd rather see a Batman limited series on HBO Max at this point, because
I don't think it's going to happen, because I think it's going to make a lot of money theatrically, but you know, it would be like you said, Zaki, the walls are breaking down, and I could see them potentially spinning it off. You know, I mean, I was just reading an article yesterday too about the guy who runs Fox now, and they're talking about how they're going to spin off all these franchises into new directions on streaming. And I think you really can do that. You can take a lot more risks, you know, and if you don't like it, just people won't watch it, you know, and it's not as dependent on like a big opening weekend, you know, doesn't have to break records every time.
But and I mean, you mentioned Peacemaker. Have you watched the whole series?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, the final episode, there's like the cameo that wouldn't have, you know, that's not something that would have been even conceivable.
Easily.
No,
you can do it.
Yeah.
So you're doing GCPD. I don't see why Pattinson can't show up for.
I'm sure he will. Like it's I mean, you know, and perhaps more, you know, more so than we would even think, you know. Yeah.
But I'll say like GCPD is even lower on my radar now, because surprisingly, I did not like Jeffrey Wright in the role of Gordon.
It's not that I didn't like him in the role. I thought he was fine. I just didn't like the role.
But like he didn't feel like Jim Gordon to me at all. Like he just didn't have like any specific mannerisms other than come on, man.
I just don't think they wrote him very well. I think he was kind of.
Jeffrey Wright is a great actor, but this is not a great Jim Gordon. Like,
I don't think that even Catwoman was that well written. You know, I think you could have done more with that character. You know, and
I think it goes in order of reverse for best Catwoman. I think it goes, you know, I still think the best is Michelle Pfeiffer. Second best would be Anne Hathaway, and the third would be Zoe. And I love
and
Zoe
Halle Berry, of
again,
course,
but-
at the.
Oh, no, she's not. Yeah. We put her off.
I think Zoe Kravitz, I mean, they might bring her back and they might do more. I would have made the character weirder though. Like, I think it was because she was very like low key. She's just a regular person who can fight. She's not really Catwoman. She's just like kind of a.
And the only nod to that is the fact that she has cats, she has sharp nails, and she's a cat burglar. And then she's like, "Oh, I have 9 lives." But
I was wondering about that. Like, you're not Catwoman yet. Like, why are you saying that about yourself?
Yeah, it doesn't really add up. And I think that's one of those things where, you know, I have a problem with this grounded in reality shit. Like, it's starting to get a bit much. And if you look at it, like, the Batman is like the exact polar opposite of something like Batman and Robin, which they've gone, it's like so grounded in reality that it's like, dude, you understand that you're adapting a comic book, right? Like, I get the desire to want to sell it to an audience as like, hey, this is really happening. I respect that. But at the same time, he takes his little nods where he wants to, like stuff with the Batmobile, with the crazy contact lenses that can identify everybody and all this other stuff. And I'm like, you know, and shit that, look, Batman would have been dead, you know, all the stuff that he like escapes. Like, come on, this guy would be freaking dead.
Well, they're shooting him with machine guns and he's kind of like,
and no bullet ever hits his head or face. Like, come on.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I'm like, you can't have it both ways, you know? And it's like, if you want to try and keep it grounded, that's cool. But you can also embrace the comic book roots and some of the fantastic elements of it too. Like, you know, why not learn a little something about Catwoman's origin or what her affinity is for?
Well, I think if they had done her more like Pfeiffer, it would have worked really well because I think Kravitz would have been able to pull it off. And, you know, if you watch Batman Returns, I mean, it's funny. I never got when I was young how good she is in that role and how amazing that role is.
So good.
You know, because she's nuts, you know, and there's that real duality of the character, you know, which is great, you know, and remember Laura watched it with me and she blew her mind and she had seen it before too, but it was just like never really gloomed onto the fact that, you know, this is a Catwoman movie. That's what it was. It was a Catwoman movie. Batman was secondary and it really worked, you know, and the relationship between her and Batman worked really well too. And it's a shame that Pfeiffer isn't held as high regard as somebody like Keaton is, because I'd like to see her come back somehow.
Dude, like, I mean, there could be a scene in the
what's to stop them?
Or Batgirl where, you know, Batman goes upstairs and goes to get some fucking coffee or something, and then there's Michelle Pfeiffer walking into the kitchen.
Hey, babe.
Like, what? Like, I really would love a moment like that because
that'd be cool.
Why couldn't that happen? You know, like that would be amazing. Be like,
you know, I mean, it could very well happen. She still looks great too.
They may have it up their sleeves right now. I mean. So,
but you know, but I would like to talk for a minute though, like of things we really liked about the movie, because there were things that I really liked about it, and one of them was Farrell. So this is funny. As I walked out of the movie, Laura really liked it, and she was like, "Wow, I went to see it with 2 people, okay, both girls." And we walked out of the movie, and they both the same question, like, "Oh, it was really good." Hey, who played Penguin? So they thought it was like some middle-aged Italian guy. I'm like, oh, that was Colin Farrell. I'm like, no, get the fuck out. No, who really? I'm like, no, it was Colin, because they didn't know. They don't follow the movie
news.
News.
So unrecognizable.
Yeah, he looks like Richard Kind, and it's like he's not. And that was Colin Farrell. And then they're like, how is that even? Because it's the same makeup man who did Leto and Gucci.
I was just going to mention that. Like, it's a weird kind of thing where they're hiring these actors that are, you know, generally, you know, kind of Hollywood A-list, good looking, you know, leading man types. And they got to ugly it up now with some of these roles, which is kind of hilarious.
If you watch somebody, it's funny.
Sorry, just real quick. I saw somebody online who described Colin Farrell as he's doing Alec Baldwin's imitation of Robert De Niro from Saturday Night Live. And I went into my second viewing with that. And I was like, that's really funny. Because that's
I loved him though. And
he's so good. He's fantastic.
I hope that it turns that it, you know, that spinoff really happens. But then if you want to watch the complete other side of Colin Farrell, same movie that they came out the same day after Yang. Where, you know,
I just saw the trailer for that.
He's real Colin Farrell, you know, he looks great, you know, and he's very empathetic and sensitive, You know, he cries in the movie, and it's like you watch that and you're like, oh, that's Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell is a great comic book villain because he was also great as Bullseye, even though
I was just gonna mention Bullseye. Yeah.
I was gonna say I think he's one of the best actors out there. I think
he's great. He's an awesome actor.
He's like a character actor who happens to look like a leading man. It's like he's been waiting for this moment where he can just.
I interviewed him years ago. I didn't really interview. I was in like a round table with him, and I was like, God, man, fuck Miami Vice, fucking love it. And then he was like looking at me like I was making fun of him. And I was like, no, man, really, I love it. And then he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, man, it's so cool. I'm like, I'll feed for mojitos.
If only he knew what kind of.
It's such a cool line, and then you can tell I really liked it. And he was like, "Oh, that's cool, man. I'm glad that that movie seems like it's coming back." People hated it when it came out. Like, oh, not me and not my friends.
When I met Charlie Hunnam at CinemaCon, I shook his hand. And I was like, I got to tell you, I love King Arthur. And he goes, "Oh, so you're the one."
Yeah.
And I was like,
you know who said that to me? Martin Campbell said that to me when I told him that I loved Mask of Zorro. And I'm like, oh, everybody loves that movie.
Everybody loves that.
It was a huge hit. It got a sequel.
Mask of Zorro. It's amazing.
Yeah, it got like a sequel. Like, really? Like, I was kind of like,
weird.
That was false modesty, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So one thing that I have to mention that I love about the movie, which you can enjoy outside the movie, is Michael Giacchino's score.
Amazing score.
I think it absolutely stands as a perfect addition to the long line of Batman scores. I think it's amazing.
That's another thing I mentioned in my review, though, is that you can't say that Batman's ever been poorly served by composers, because the Batman scores have always been really good. The Danny Elfman scores were great. Elliot Goldenthal's scores were really good. You know, not great movies, but very good scores. The Hans Zimmer scores were amazing. The Junkie XL music is really good. Like, Batman has always been very well served. And there's something about, brings out sometimes the most, you know, the director's vision, and brings out the composer's vision too. And it's funny, I didn't think the score, when I was hearing tracks from it, was great, but then when I saw it in the movie, it worked really, really well. I really liked it.
Score it's part of the movie. Like, it's an actual character in the movie. And the thing is, it's always playing. The score is continuous throughout the movie. So I think there's a lot to be said for that too. And it really just embodies the movie. And the theme is great. And it's haunting, it's eerie, and you can hear shades of Elfman. You can hear shades of Zimmer in this score.
Oh, the part when he escapes the police station and he flies out, and then the theme kicks in, like, I had a chill when I was watching that. Like, that's a really well done sequence, you know. And I mean, and I love Pattinson. I thought Pattinson was great.
He's good. I wish, you know, I wanted a better Bruce Wayne. I did. I wanted more from my Bruce Wayne.
But, you know,
as Batman, he was great.
The whole point of the movie, though, is that at the end, he's like, I can't just be vengeance anymore. I need to change. And I feel like in the sequel and all the I feel like the next one that we see, he's going to have like the Wayne Foundation, and he's going to be more of a typical Bruce Wayne, where he's affecting that persona, you know, like,
you may be
to kind of help the city. I think that's an evolution.
That's my sense as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it needs to be. But you know, the one thing where he was like, oh, I want to be hope and help people. I'm like, well, you're not Superman. You still go out on the streets and beat the fuck out of people. So let's be careful there. Like, you're like putting people on a stretcher and loading them on.
Oh, and then when he lectures Catwoman, and he's like, you can't kill anybody. I'm like, no, sure you can.
No, listen, we can play the Batman kills debate, but I'm telling you right now, some people died from in this movie.
The end of the movie, a lot of guys either died or ended up like quadriplegic.
There's no way in hell there aren't some people dead. So people will have this argument online. I don't really care though. Like, none of that affects me. I'm like, by the very nature of what the Batman does, he would at least accidentally kill people on the reg. So that's
I like to in Batman Returns how callous he is about murdering though. Like, there's even like just like thugs, you know.
He
like
smiles.
Yeah, with the circuit.
I don't know why people get so wrapped up.
Sets the guy on fire with the
That's right.
He's running after him on fire, and it's like, and he's like.
Shouldn't have stood there.
It's pretty ridiculous that he's like lecturing Catwoman and all this other stuff. And there's definitely scenes where I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure he just killed that guy. And it's like, just because you don't use a gun does not mean you ain't fucking killing people. They're bad.
Well, I mean, to me, that goes back to Batman Begins at the end, where he's like, I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. I'm like, no, you killed him then.
Totally.
It's pretty much murder, bro.
But
well, that was kind of what I liked about the Snyder movies, is that you just see in the dream sequence Batman machine gunning people. I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense to me. Like, he kills anyway.
In those circumstances, why not? I just think, I think it's fine that Batman does have a rule that, hey, I'm not the Punisher. I'm not going out just gunning people down. But
in general, I wouldn't kill, but
he's like, but if some motherfuckers die along the way, that's just what happened. I could deal with that. It's like, I don't get into the whole, like, he can never kill ever. And I'm like, first off, people that think that are just completely unrealistic. If you're trying to look at this in a grounded way, are completely unrealistic, because everything that Batman does would lead to death. That's just a fact. If you want to be truly grounded, what Batman does would kill people.
You're never going to be able to make a grounded Batman movie, though. It's about a guy who dresses up as a bat to fight crime.
Exactly. And like, some people were saying that a lot of times where he's like walking around because of this grounded thing is it kind of feels like a guy in cosplay. And it does feel that way sometimes. I kind of agree. Like when he's walking around on the crime scene and like all the cops are looking at him like, fuck, of course they're going to be looking at him weird.
I'd be like, where'd you get that outfit? What is that? Is that Kevlar?
And that's another problem that I had. I know we're talking about good stuff and I have other good things to say, but that's another problem I had, which was that, he is, shit, I lost my train of thought. I lost it. Oh my God. I gotta bring it back.
You didn't like the suit when he's showing up and the cops doing the fashion show. Like, what?
It'll come back to me.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Can I offer a thought in terms of what I liked about it?
Yes. I want to hear it.
What I did like is the approach of saying we're just going to drop into this world. It already exists, and we're going to expect people to catch up. One thing I've said in the past is what I love about Batman Begins, which I think is in my top two. It's either my first or second favorite all time. But what I love is it's either the beginning of the Dark Knight trilogy or it's the lead into every Batman adventure ever.
Sure.
And you could just as easily kind of squint your eyes and say, this is a year after Batman Begins. And it works for me in that vein. And I was thinking that's what Batman, unlike many other superhero characters, allows for, is everyone knows the pieces well enough that you can just kind of be like, yeah, there's Catwoman, there's Alfred, and there you go.
You don't need to show it all again.
Exactly. And so that when you talk about like, they should have developed this more and we should have seen that more. The thought I have is, well, the nice thing is there's probably going to be a sequel, so we'll get that development. The other nice thing is people are so familiar with all the versions that you can kind of mix it up and people will roll with it because we've already gotten so many different interpretations of it,
They're different, but they're not that different. Like the Grace notes are kind of the same, right? Like he is, rich millionaire. They're not going to make it so that he's not a rich multi-millionaire or billionaire. I do agree with one criticism that you had though, Paul, was that Alfred I felt was kind of almost irrelevant in the movie.
Almost to the point, like, why is he even in the movie?
Yeah.
And I guess that comes from just reading the comics and stuff for so long is. Alfred is he is the father figure to Bruce Wayne and Batman by proxy and is very much a part of it, but he kind of just shows up to solve a crossword puzzle and open some mail. And then,
I kind of liked how they dealt with Alfred in Joker, when the Joker is kind of hassling, young Bruce Wayne, and then like Alfred shows up to like fuck off, kind of thing. I liked that, a little bit, or even like when his dad was alive, Alfred had like kind of a paternal interest in Bruce Wayne. And I thought that was actually well addressed in the Michael Keaton Batman movies too, where he's having dinner with her and then he's like, let's go down and chill with Alfred, and it's much warmer.
And he's such a huge part of the Dark Knight trilogy. It's actually one of the things that I did not like about the Dark Knight Rises was that Alfred abandons him, because I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe for a second that Alfred would ever leave him no matter what. I think he would go down in flames with Bruce and Batman because he's a part of it as much as Batman is, at that point. So to say suddenly get a conscience, be like, oh, I'm not going to be a part of it, doesn't make sense.
He's ride or die.
Yeah, exactly. He's ride or die. Exactly. But Andy Serkis's Alfred, I don't feel like he was distinct in any way. I don't feel like,
Well, they made him like the SAS kind of guy though, with like the scars and like the messed up arm, and the cane. Like, so you could tell he was like, he had this badass kind of background, which I don't even know if you need though, because I kind of like, I like him as kind of the older, nice old British dude,
nice man. Yeah, I felt like there should.
I kind of like Jeremy Irons as
he's a good grumpy Alfred
wearing a nice scarf,
making I feel like this was probably my least favorite Alfred, to be honest.
Wow.
And I
didn't have any feelings about him either way. Like, I thought he was fine. I wouldn't mind seeing him back in the sequel, but I didn't feel like, whoa.
I'd rather see more of him. I'd rather see him more fleshed out. But like, I definitely prefer Gow or Kane or Jeremy Irons over Serkis, because he just doesn't really establish himself, and it's not even really his fault. It's Reeves' fault in that sense, where he's just kind of like, well, we're just gonna play it very low key. But I didn't buy it because like when he's injured later in the film, and I was kind of like, oh, now Bruce Wayne cares, because he feels fairly indifferent to Alfred in their opening scenes where you first see them together. He's just kind of like, whatever, Alfred, like, I'll do what I want, shut your mouth. And then it's like all of a sudden he's like,
if I close my eyes, it's like Robert Pattinson is on the call.
And he's like speeding in the Batmobile to
get up, Dad.
Suddenly to save him. All of a sudden he like gives a shit. But yeah, that was.
I think Alfred should have been a motion capture ape. I think that would have in a monkey suit,
monkey suit, and then with a cane as well. It's kind of fuck it. We just needed Caesar.
I was thinking of Project X Apple. Apple. But I mean, I really did enjoy it though. I think that I think it's I thoroughly enjoyed watching it. I don't think it's perfect, and I think it's got some flaws that not everybody's gonna, because everybody gets really excited about things and they get really into it, and then point out flaws. People kind of get a little bit pissy, but then
definitely see that on Twitter right now.
I do think it's a really good movie though. I don't want you to get taken.
I think it's good. I think an 8 on 10, 7.5 out of 10 is a realistic score.
7.5 on 10. You're getting too close to Sam Elliott in talking about Power of the Dog.
Did you like it? Fuck no, man.
That was such a. The guy's a filthy mouth though. I listen to the whole interview, just fuck every second word.
Of Sam Elliott, he's very.
The problem with the thing about Sam Elliott though in that whole thing is that there's a very telling scene where he's talking about his wife. You could tell he had a big fucking fight with his wife, so he's in a shit mood. So that's why that's one of the things. I think that if he's like an 80-year-old guy, he was in a shitty fucking mood, and he said some shit, and I'm sure that he afterwards probably made up with his wife, and then he's like, oh fuck.
I read that excerpt, the Marin excerpt, like the night before it blew up. I just read it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let's see where this is at in the morning. And I wake up and it's like Sam Elliott trending. I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right.
I'm sure Sam Elliott gives zero fucks.
Yeah, he's like, what's
now? I don't know why people are saying he's homophobic. I didn't get that. Like, I actually loved that movie,
I think Sam Elliott I know what he's trying to say. He just doesn't say it very well. But I
agree. He doesn't. He's a very emotional guy though, and he was just like, and if he hadn't said fuck every second word,
I don't think he's wrong personally. I just don't think that he said it in the most I don't know the best way. But I think
he was just in a bad fucking mood, and he said some shit, and he said it probably not as It's funny. I did love that movie, though, Power of the Dog. But I liked it a lot. I could see his point, though, to a certain extent. But anyway,
I haven't watched it. So the Batman. I think for me, I agree with you, Chris. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's a great movie. And to your point about people's reactions, this happens all the time. It happens with a new Star Wars movie. Any big IP, as soon as something new and fresh comes out, you get a whole horde of people that are like, it's the best ever. Pattinson's the best Batman. This is the best. And I like, you saw it one time.
Everything that came before is shit.
Like, calm the fuck down. Like, let's, give yourself, there's this rush to like, I must react and I must have a big, broad reaction immediately, and people need to know my new ranking system.
But you know, the thing is that gets traffic though, you know, and as a
yes, it absolutely does.
And as a webmaster, I'd be lying if I said that we don't have a Batman films ranked article in the works.
Oh no, I mean, I put my rankings out there just to get some context.
Is what it is.
And I put underneath it, I was like, I reserve the right to change my mind whenever.
Oh, me too. Mine change all the time. You know, I would have last year it would have been Nolan 1, 2, 3. You know, and now it's a little bit more mixed up.
Yeah, and like we just, you know, people need to allow themselves to just understand really that they have the ability to change their mind. Nothing you say right now has to stay set in stone.
It would probably be, though, I would say this, though, the Batman would probably be top 5 Batman for me, though.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. 89 Batman Returns, Dark Knight Rise. Like even though I don't love Dark Knight Rises on the whole, there were moments in Dark Knight Rises where I was like my heart was pumping, especially that ending, which I think is just like a phenomenal ending.
Yeah, I've always been a defender of Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, I mean, I just got more of an emotional punch from Dark Knight Rises than I did from the Batman.
I would say though, you know, the thing is, for me, 89 Batman is the one that's kind of, I think, a little bit overpraised. Like, I think that it has genius performances in it, but I think it's also kind of compromised to a certain extent, you know?
I don't know. I love it. I think 89 Batman is still, it's my favorite Gotham City that's ever been put to film. I felt like in the Batman, they had a great location. I've been to Glasgow, and when you're there and you walk around, it looks like Gotham City. It's amazing. Like the architecture, the structures, everything. You're like, holy crap, I'm in Gotham City. And I think it's brilliant that they use that. But then they're like, oh, we're going to shoot in Chicago too. And then we're going to shoot in all these other places. We're just going to kind of mesh them all together. And it looks like a hodgepodge rather than a unified kind of vision. And that kind of like threw me off a little bit.
I always saw it as like New York City though. Like that's how I've always viewed Gotham City that way. Like a thinly veiled New York.
As a New York that's, I don't know, like a little more like Gothic though. That's Gotham City. So anyways, I think this is a movie that will age well over time.
Yeah,
I think that people will go back and they'll be like, oh, I really like this. I really like that. Yeah. I also think it's a movie that will age well with sequels. I think that sequels will complement it. I feel like that's what made Batman Begins better was you see the Dark Knight and you see Dark Knight Rises, and it's a very unified thing. That's why I typically refer to it as the Dark Knight trilogy, because they really feel unified and each film kind of makes the other one better.
I'll be mad if they bring in J.J. Abrams to finish up the trilogy.
Oh my God. So I did say this to Zaki on text, and I am very curious how general audiences are going to react to this movie. Like the nerd audience, like it's kind of reacted pretty much how I expected, but I'm very curious to see how your everyday moviegoer handles a 3-hour Batman movie that is basically a remake of Seven with Batman.
Yeah. Play. I wonder what the cinema score is going to be.
Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm very curious how that's going to affect box office, especially when people find out it's going to be on HBO Max next month. People have learned patience through the pandemic.
Yeah. 45 days. So, it's not very long.
I was talking to my brother and he was like, should I go see it in theaters? And I was like, well, I think you should, go see it. And I was like, it comes out on HBO Max next month. And he's like, next month? Like, oh, I'm not going to the theater. Like, I'll just wait. And there's so much content. You can pad, what you're watching up until that point. So
I remember when I was young and Batman only took 3 months to come out in video, and that was amazing. That was like, whoa!
I remember too. I remember buying my VHS copy and being like, oh,
yeah, fresh. But it's just like, but now it's like that's forever. Remember when Jurassic Park took 14 months to come out?
Good Lord, did it really? I don't remember.
Yeah. It was over a year.
Remember when New Release Tuesday at Best Buy was a thing, and like you had to be there every Tuesday? Like, oh, what's out?
I went to a few New Release Tuesdays with you, Paul.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Like, I never missed one. I was telling my
son, get the new DVDs. I
was telling my son because we went to Best Buy the other day, and we were waiting in line because this is how crazy it's gotten. I was in the store and I was trying to buy this speaker. I needed a new speaker for my TV. And we had tested them out, and there's always people everywhere at Best Buy. You're like, dude, there's all these people here. And I couldn't find anybody, of course, when I needed them. So I went on my phone and ordered what I needed from that store for store
it's the quickest way.
Rather than go stand in line and tell them what I wanted and give them a SKU, I just ordered it and I walked to pick up and got it and left. And I was explaining to my son, like, yeah, man, like every Tuesday when I was like in college, like I would be here, like scouring the DVD and CD aisles for like the
see what came out. Yeah.
Now it's like, that's just kind of dead, you know, it's like, it's a bygone era. So anyways, the way it goes. So Zaki, what's your final takeaways on the Batman as we wrap this up?
So I think you landed at 7.5. Chris, you said 8. I'm probably at like an 8.5. I think I liked it slightly more than you guys. And I will say, I think I'm the only one of us who's seen it twice. I definitely appreciated it a lot more on my second viewing, and I was a thumbs up already. So I would agree. I think this will stand up to rewatches because they're not merely like the story stuff, but I mean the intentionality with shot choices and things. I mean, Matt Reeves, who I've always been a fan of, I think he sort of crested a new wave with this. I really like a lot of the artistic nature of how he shot it, you know. And to your point, yeah, I hope we get a sequel, but more importantly, and I said this to Brian the other day, I hope where we can break out of the trilogy paradigm, because I'd like to see 4 or 5 of these. Like, why does it need
make it? That's why I say like a TV series would be, I would be more apt to that. Like, do a 5 or 6 episode sequel series and just keep doing that. Like, I agree. We get tied up. We get way too tied into this trilogy bullshit.
Yeah.
You know? Because a trilogy suggests that part 3 is the end, right?
That's right.
That's it. It's done. But yeah, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree with you too. Like the visual, we didn't really talk enough about the cinematography and everything, which is just phenomenal. It's a beautifully shot movie. No matter what you feel about story-wise or what problems you have, it looks amazing. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, and one last thing, somebody pointed this out to me, that Peter Sarsgaard, it blows up in this just as his wife Maggie Gyllenhaal did in The Dark Knight. So now we have both husband and wife are blown up by the villains in a Batman movie.
Well, and somebody had suggested that he was the DA and that, you know, the bomb goes off, that maybe he lived and becomes Two-Face. I guess that could be entirely possible because we don't see a funeral, or I don't know that we even talk about necessarily him being dead afterwards. You've seen it twice, so there's so much to unpack with this movie, though. It almost begs that you have to go see it a second time.
Yeah.
Just to catch up on everything. I had to go to Twitter today to like get to talk to people that saw the movie to clarify some of the shit that I'm writing about. Cause like, I have no idea. I was like, oh my God, Twitter, help me. Like, I need help. So anyways, that is it for us for this soft reopening of The Beard and the Bald. We will be back with regular episodes as Chris and I get our schedules together and figure out the next steps going forward. Hope that you guys have all been able to see the Batman. Let us know your thoughts. You can hit us up on Twitter. You can hit us up on Instagram. Let us know your thoughts, what you guys felt. And then Zaki, where can people find you on the reg? Where are you hanging out? Where do people find Zaki Hasan?
Well, you can always find me on Twitter at Zaki's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. I'm also at the San Francisco Chronicle. Actually, I have a piece that just went up this week celebrating 30 years of Batman the Animated Series that people might enjoy giving a look at. And I also co-host the Movie Film Podcast with my longtime co-host, Brian Hall. He's out of town this week, so I came begging at Paul and Chris's door. I need somebody to talk about the Batman. But we just dropped a commentary track for The Dark Knight Rises, actually. So we've done commentaries for all 3 of those, and I would love for people to check those out. And of course, our The Batman discussion will also be up soon.
Yeah, awesome. And then Chris, he is took over my old digs at joblo.com, running the show over there, doing the thing. So you can find him over there. You can find me at Arctic Ninja Paul on Twitter, and you can find my rumblings on Screen Rant. And that's it. So again, thank you guys for joining us. Let us know what you think about the Batman Below. What do you think about our thoughts about the film? And come back next week. We'll be back. So remember to love what you love, and we'll see you next time.